Okay, let's move on to Councillor Bassan, and then we'll try to get Councillor Pena back on the line.
Thank you, Madam President. My question has come from several emails and phone calls, different pieces of information that have come to me, and I think that for the public's interest and to say that we are doing our best to listen to them and answer any questions that we receive, I would like to say that it has come to my attention that APD Acting Chief Harold Medina is under investigation, Chief Medina is under investigation for allegedly interfering with the arrest of a family member who had 2 outstanding warrants. Is the administration able to clarify this further for the public?
Council President Borrego, Councillor Bassan, I am aware of the false rumors being spread by disgruntled former employees who have been trying really for the past year to discredit Chief Medina in an attempt to cover up for their own shortcomings. And this is exactly the kind of drama that required a change in leadership over there. The former chief actually raised these false allegations last year in June. And it's no coincidence that we've recently gotten NIPA requests from his attorney, and these rumors are being spread falsely on social media. But I think they show that, there are lots of folks who want to prevent Chief Medina from being the chief of police through insinuation and false allegations. But what I'd really like to do is allow him to explain it directly. But I will say that this really, in my mind, crossed a line in the sense that they are re-victimizing Chief Medina's son, who is openly gay and has been the victim of vicious acts of domestic violence and stalking. I want to thank you, Councillor Bassan, for the respectful way in which you've handled, balancing the need to bring some of this matter into the light, and also while being respectful of the experience that Chief Medina's son has undergone. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Would you like to respond?
Yes, councilors, Madam President, members of council, thank you for the opportunity. My son was the victim of domestic violence in 2019 when he contacted the police to provide an escort while he returned to get personal property and belongings at the apartment he shared with his abuser. During the encounter, my son told officers about the abuse that occurred the night before, as well as a history of abuse against him. Officers also spoke with the abuser. I was not present, nor was I involved in the encounter. My son was allowed to get his belongings and leave. We have the video from the officers that will show the entire encounter. My son's abuser told police that my son had a misdemeanor warrant for DWI at the time of the incident. We also learned from my son his abuser often threatened to tell police about the warrant if my son ever reported their abusive relationship. My son later took care of his warrants through the court system. At the end of the encounter, the officers told my son he couldn't promise my son that charges wouldn't be brought against his abuser, but the officer provided my son with the domestic violence packet, which guided my son to seek out resources. In fact, my son was able to use those resources to file a restraining order against his abuser and further document other incidents, which include stalking. My son's abuser would later call police and accuse my son of violating the restraining order. However, a judge threw out those charges because the restraining order was against the abuser, not my son. I appreciate my son was able to access resources available to victims of domestic violence. He took advantage of those resources, and he was brave for doing so. But it is despicable that the system as a whole failed him. When these rumors started last year, my son was afraid. He would be re-victimized, and he moved out of state. The reason I became a police officer was to serve the public and protect the community. Though that is especially true of victims of crime, nobody should have to move or feel shame because they have been victimized. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Chief Medina. I'm going to go in order of people, councilors, of how you raised your hand. Councilor Davis, you've been waiting in the wings. Then I will go to Councilor Bassan and then Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam President. I promised you earlier today I wouldn't take up a lot of time in the meeting today, but I want to respond to that line of questioning really quickly. This is incredibly frustrating. We understand the dynamic and the drama, and I don't think it's incumbent upon us to draw out sort of that in public. Chief Medina and I had a chance to talk about this issue some time back because I appreciate that his son was gay and involved in a relationship that was problematic for him. And I had heard these rumors and I asked about it, got some information, was able to resolve it without doing it in public. But let me just say this, the fact that we will let people bring these rumors out as a part of this process, or I'm just incredibly frustrated that the fact that we would draw out somebody's domestic violence history and replay all of those dramas in public because of an internet rumor. I appreciate, Councilor Bassan, that you want to resolve those. I'm not mad at you at all. I'm mad at the folks that are trying to spread this around and make it a thing. And Chief, I'm really sorry to you and your family because these are issues that we all ought to have the opportunity to work on. And I know that you had the chance to do that. I'm just incredibly mad and frustrated that folks have tried to make this into a thing again, especially says a gay man and a former cop who understands that people in these types of relationships, and particularly from our community, have a really hard time with this issue and have a hard time reporting it and a hard time dealing with it. And to know that folks in APD would abuse the trust that those victims gave to those officers for some political purpose just incredibly infuriates me. I think it points to the reason we need to do more reform in APD and we need to do more work to get past this. And it just reinforces to me that we're making the right decision to move forward with new leadership. So I'm sorry, Madam President, I didn't intend to speak about this. This part makes me particularly frustrating. When all of us get into public service, we expect that our lives are fair game, but not that of our family for some political gain. And we want to know that if our families had troubles, they would be able to call the police without worrying that it ends up on the 6 o'clock news or in a city council meeting. So sorry, that's my soapbox for the day. Chief, I apologize to you. And I'm just horrified that you have to sit there and explain that to the public. And I'm sorry for that.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. We appreciate your comments. We'll move back to Councilor Bassan and then Councilor Sena and then Councilor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. And Councilor Davis, I'm sorry I wasn't able to follow up after Chief Medina was able to give his response, but I would like to give a little bit back knowledge of today's events in that I reached out to the administration with my concern of how do we balance the public's inquiries and concern for the appointment of a police chief when there is such rumors. So it was brought to my attention through many direct conversations with the chief and with the administration to the point where by no means, for all of you to understand, did I ever ask the chief to share this full story of his. That was his own decision. And Chief, I commend you for that. And I thank you for taking the courage and the willingness to put that out there so that the public unfortunately does get to hear part of the story from the source. And I know that as I'm so frustrated as well, Councilor Davis, it's what brought all of this on today, because in order to appoint a chief and to confirm him as a council, I think that we have to be able to answer the questions that the public poses, but we also need to be able to respect somebody on the other side of that as well. And I do not feel like, from what I've learned, that that full respect has been given in return. So again, I agree, and I apologize, Chief, that your family's issues has had to be aired in such a public way. But I definitely feel with your courage and bravery to do so and to answer those questions, that goes miles as far as I am concerned, in that you are indeed going probably way further than I ever would go in regards to putting the public's safety first over your own family in many instances from what we discussed. So thank you for having this courage and taking the time to talk to us and to answer publicly the questions that have been posed and to straighten out the rumor, because you are the only one that was able to do so. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Councilor Sena?
Thank you, Madam President. I know, what was already really iterated, just really eloquently by Counselor Davis. I think many of us share the same frustration, and to see this, before the public at a council meeting as well, I don't think was really warranted. And I appreciate, us trying to finesse the issue and the question and the rumors to address it properly, but at the same time, having to relive this type of trauma, not just as a police chief, but also as a father, on behalf of your son, and really for your son as well. And I do hope that, he feels safe and comfortable now where he is, but at the same time, understand that this shouldn't have been necessary to really see this traumatic event play out over again in such a public way is really unfortunate. So I just want to commend you, and really also to your family as well, as I know that, again, it shouldn't have been pulled into this matter, but I do believe family is off limits. And so I just hope and extend my adoration to your son for his bravery and his courage, and hope that he has everything that he needs going through this process as well. And hope that you have the resources as well. Just knowing, having a father go through that is really difficult. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sena. Councillor Jones is waiting in the wings, as well as Councillor Pena. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. And I would like to add my opinion to this also. I met with Chief Medina. He volunteered information about this event to me. I never asked. I would have been reluctant to ask it, but I believe that he handled it correctly. I am not concerned about his ability to be chief because of this gossip. And whatever happened was a family affair. It's my understanding he did not interfere with the police force in any way in this happening. And I must say, I'm disappointed in some of our citizens that they would try to make something that harms a child so much, no matter how old that child is. The child is still has a father's love, and it's very difficult to handle this. So I'd just like to say I would not vote against Chief Medina in any way because of this incident. And I think he, from what I've heard and looked at, he has handled it correctly and like a true gentleman and a professional. So thank you, Madam President, for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Pena.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sorry, my internet at home went off, so I'm trying to use a hotspot, and if I cut off, I apologize. I'm trying to get this corrected over here, but I just want to say I really didn't hear much of what had transpired. I heard bits and pieces as I was receiving the connection, but I just want to say that, I really admire Chief for putting this forward. Our family should be off limits, as you all know. Putting ourselves in the public eye like this is something that we've accepted, and we know that we take the criticisms and of ourselves and our responsibilities. But Chief, I apologize that you had to go through this. Obviously many of us, I have a large family, have been through, personal incidents, and the fact that you handled this with such integrity. I'm proud to have you as our chief. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pena. I would just like to say that with regard to such a high profile position, sometimes we often become targets, and, things that our family does, or situations that have occurred in the past, and that's unfortunate. And I just want to say that I'm empathetic with the chief's family, and probably the way that he's feeling in all of this, and feeling like that group of people that maybe are not as supportive. I'm sorry about that, but I think that the chief has handled much of this with, and I've met with the chief, his passion, his dedication, his experience in the community. I think those are all qualities that overshadow the negative. And I would just like to say that he has handled much of this with grace and courage. And I will be supporting his confirmation today. Is there any other counselor that would like to speak? If not, Chief, we're going to come back to this later on under appointments. And we appreciate that you are with us and listening to this. And I think you know that the council does support you. Thank you.